I'd love to dive into Daines and the insight from that conversation. Was there any talk about the potential of who's going to be the next Speaker of the House?
Hey everyone, thanks for checking in. This is the latest TDR Cannabis Exclusive. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Hope you're doing well. Guys, want to know some important information coming out of Washington and where this industry sits right now and what could happen moving forward? No better person to have on. Let's bring back, he is the co-manager and president of the Pelorus Capital Group, and I would say in some ways a TDR contributor. Rob Sechrist joins us. Good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you guys.
Yes, very connected to Washington, as we've said in the past. Anthony, good to see you. You were on mute, sir, but unmute yourself, and we'll welcome you in.
Yeah, I'm having mic troubles. I actually forgot to bring it in front and center, but I think it should be good now.
Good stuff. Okay. Good seeing you a couple weeks ago in Chicago. Before we get into the one of the events that you attended last week in Newport Beach, what was your takeaway, big takeaway from Chicago for you?
I think that look, we got a chance to speak to some great people there.
Yeah.
We got to speak with Senator Cory Gardner.
Yeah.
We got some insight on what's happening there, and it feels like the nuclear winter for cannabis equity is starting to thaw, and there might be like sun shining through just a sliver of cloud, and the ice hasn't started to thaw yet, but we can maybe see that there might be some liquidity coming.
Well said. Actually, that makes a point. But yeah, we heard the term cautiously optimistic a few times, but the encouraging thing, as we've said in a few podcasts lately, is that there wasn't really a lot of people that didn't think in some sort of way that rescheduling wasn't going to happen. That timeline is, who knows? But you and Anthony actually had a good conversation with Cory Gardner as well. You attended a pretty predominant event last week in Newport Beach that was called the NRSC, which stands for National Republican Senatorial Committee. So some notable names that were there were Paul Merlucky, David Sachs, and even more importantly, Montana Senator and co-sponsor of the Safe Banking Act is Steve Daines. So what was this event about, and did you get a chance to speak to Senator Daines?
Yeah, so, I went to the event to speak with Senator Daines. It's my opportunity to see him in my own backyard. And, what that event is for is trying to shape the Republican strategy for selecting Republican senatorial candidates. And, that's a whole nother thing we could talk about separately. It was a really interesting to hear Palmer and David Sachs, their discussions about Ukraine. And, I don't know how much you know about Palmer, but he has a large defense company that will easily usurp what he did with selling Oculus to Facebook. And so they got into some pretty heated discussions, and I wasn't expecting. I know Palmer; he's a member of my group and a neighbor here in Newport Beach. And I wasn't expecting Palmer to be as his positions. And David was really educated, really had a deep understanding of the history of Ukraine. And I think that Palmer had great points, but I don't think he understood the full context of how we got here with Ukraine. So that was some interesting context there. I didn't know who David Sachs was, even though I follow him on Twitter. I didn't really know his background. And what an awesome guy. And I got to hang with him at his table for a long time. And it was a great place to meet people that will be shaping this country policy. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, you want to know what's going on in these people's heads. You want to know how they think about things. And the most talked about topic, it was the deficit. And even though the Senate doesn't control that, it's got to get under control. And if I could just give one super interesting tidbit that I learned is that John Thune was there, and he's pretty much presumed to be the next replacement for Mitch McConnell of the leader of the Senate or the Senate minority, whichever way it goes. He had said that when he was a congressman in the 90s, I think he said 94 or somewhere around there, that they were so concerned about the deficit back then that the only way to get where you can have the federal budget be balanced every single year is you have to amend the Constitution, I believe is what the language you use. But specifically, you have to have the 67 votes in the Senate, you have to have the majority in the House, and you have to have 33 states ratified. They had everything, and they got 66 votes in the Senate. They missed by one vote. This was almost 24 years ago. Just think where we would be today as a country if the federal government had to balance their budget. I was like blown away by that.
That's wild.
I mean, I'd love to dive into Daines and the insight from that conversation. Was there any talk about the potential of who's going to be the next Speaker of the House as it relates to that conversation?
There was, and so you have to know that obviously this is the Senate, and they're not as connected. So what I don't know how much I can share, but I would just say this: that the consensus was, look, no matter which way you feel about Gates and what he's doing, the even if you agree with what his principles are, the timing to do this and to fall on your sword here for this and blow up the entire momentum that the Republicans had and give this basically win or the make the Republicans look so bad at this point was not the right place to fall on your sword. You fell on your sword for discretionary spending when you should have been focusing on the larger ball where you could have gotten a non-discretionary, which is 70% of the entire budget, which is entitlements. And that's what the caucus, that's where the Republicans, there's a broader strategy to try to tighten in, rein in spending. And, that's what the bigger, broader point was, that, look, granted that the principle's there and we get it, but you've got to pick the right time and place. If you're going to blow up the airport, let's blow it up when we know that there's planes that it's going to have the most impact, and there's not, we blow it up at night where nobody's there. They can fix it by the next morning. It doesn't have as much impact. I don't know if that's a good example, but I'm basically saying you could have, if you're going to, you basically got one nuclear option to blow. You want to do it where it has the most impact.
Wow. That's crazy. The times we're living in, right?
Those are probably some really bad examples. But,
well, let's circle it back. I know that you got a chance to speak, and I think a lot of cannabis investors would know, like, if you get a chance to speak to Steve Daines, there's some pretty important topics that are being discussed right now that are probably more important than cannabis. However, if we do, like Kevin McCarthy is floating the idea of reclaiming his post this week, as Anthony kind of alluded to, wanting, like, who could be the next Speaker of the House. But was there many conversations pertaining to the cannabis space and what his thoughts were, like, on the future of, like, SAFE in the next, whatever, I don't want to say timeline wise, but how that's progressing?
Sure. So let me just frame this up. There was nobody that is talking about cannabis at all. And so I just want the general population to know that for the Republican Party and for Senate, that they're focused on winning this election. They're focused on maintaining control. They're focused on making sure that they've got a break on the Biden administration if he gets reelected.
Yeah,
that is their sole focus. And this country, I think we've $30 trillion, gross domestic product here. Cannabis is so infinitesimal that there's nobody in the entire audience that had any questions regarding that. I luckily know him to some degree, and I was able to peel him off, and he knows what I'm going to ask about when I talk to him. And it almost feels awkward because there's so much larger things going on in this country. Cannabis, but for our audience and for what we care about in this sector is safe banking, and I knew that I could get something. I was hoping I could get some response from him, so I did ask him, can I get any updates on where things are at? And I almost felt guilty asking about it, given the broader scope of the things that were being discussed. And he stopped, and he was late to going into the dinner that he's hosting. And everybody is waiting for him to come in the door, and he's only talking with me. And I'm like feeling so guilty. I'm holding up the entire room. And he had such a passion for it. He's like, look, this is very, very important to me. I do not want to get this just passed so it goes and dies in the Senate. I'm not going to do what the House did. I want to make sure that this goes all the way through. That's my goal
So
here.
what does that mean? How does he do that?
Yeah, and so what he said is that until I can see that there's a clear path through on the Senate or on the House, I'm not pushing at this point. Now Schumer is still totally active on it, and Daines wasn't saying that he's stopping it. He just wants to see that there's a clear path through. I said, look, some people might take this as negative, and he's like, no, I want to make sure you understand. I want to get this across the finish line all the way. And that's I'm trying to make sure. I'm not trying to pass this just to get a political win here and move on. So I think that's the bigger message, that's how important it was. And It was to the point where he was staying with me to hold up this entire room. And he had a passion in his face about telling this to me. And I'm like, I wanted so bad just to suck up that time with him alone and keep driving for questions, but I really couldn't go too deep with him.
Did he have any insight? I know it's two completely different entities. They have no communication whatsoever, but did he provide any insight on whether he thinks the DEA will reschedule this at all or no?
I didn't ask him about that, but I don't think I think that the DEA, my personal opinion is that they are under the executive branch. The directive from the president is that he wants to pass this.
Yeah.
And so as the executive branch, you don't go against your boss. So I just don't see the DEA or the Department of Justice stopping the rescheduling.
Huh.
I can't see that happening.
So that begs to ask the question, if rescheduling happens, again, does safe banking, is it really even a priority anymore?
Well, look, I think we have to treat these as two separate buckets. One is legislative, and legislative action is extremely, extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And when you can do something by executive order or fiat or directives, it's much easier. The unfortunate part is sometimes that's easier to be undone. But I don't see any. I think that rescheduling is significantly more consequential than safe banking, in my personal opinion.
Yes.
There's many things that happen by going from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 on anti-money laundering, which was some of the issues for custody and some of the issues for banking that were causing trouble that'll should be freed up from that.
Well, we should wait and see, but it was good at least that you got a chance to attend this party and get an update. And I hope our viewers appreciate that. Last thing I'll ask is that, again, a lot of companies will tell us that we're just working hard. Doesn't matter whether 280E is here or not. We're not banking our business on that. But let's face it, if 280E were to go away, it would be an incredible boon, obviously, for this entire industry and a lot of companies. But more specifically, how is your business going to grow and be affected if we see rescheduling and 280E goes away? Because you're going to see a lot of lending, I would think, happen rather quickly.
Well, there's two sides to it. For our borrowers, why we're driving so hard is that this would massively impact them in a positive way. Probably a 40 to 50% net increase to their bottom line. It's just massive, massive, massive. And so it also should theoretically allow more competitors in lending. And so we anticipate that. It's a $50 billion asset class once all these facilities are built across the country and all the markets are fully stabilized. So there's plenty of room. And so we're driving to help push this policy forward as best we can through our political connections and everything that we can do, knowing that it's going to bring in additional competition, but we're okay with that. We've structured our company in anticipation and knowing that with our lines of credit, our bond offerings, our securitizations, we're able to go toe-to-toe with banks. We're prepared and ready to do that. But contemporaneously, on the other side, not our borrowers, but on our side, our cost of capital comes down.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay that premium for the bonds. Our 7% bond that we did at investment grade rated at BBB plus that we did in 2020, 2021, that should have priced it at 5 at the highest, and we had to pay 7. our securities offering, that the margin that we had to pay there, we should be able to tighten that by at least 50%, if not more. And so all of our cost of capital comes in significantly, which thus we can then push that out to our borrowers and offer some more attractive rates to our borrowers out there as well.
Yeah, can't wait to see that day and how the rollout of this entire industry is going to benefit because of that. But, times have changed. We're at a different, I think, part in this industry. And as you said, a little bit of ray of light peeking through those clouds. So let's just hope those clouds separate a little bit more.
I feel pretty strong that I'm pretty bullish that I think that the rescheduling is going to come through.
Yeah.
How long it takes for that to be implemented, I think that people forget that just because it passes or gets approved, it takes time for the policy to be written, the comment period, and be implemented. It could be a couple years down the line. I think that is going to happen, and I don't think that switching to a new administration is going to stop that.
Yeah.
I don't think Sessions is going to be allowed back in anywhere near the Department of Justice of either administration going forward.
Oh.
And so so we know that Trump, Cory Gardner clarified, that Trump was willing to sign. If it came to his desk, even though his personal position is not a pro-cannabis guy, Biden's administration is pro, and I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is pro-cannabis. So I think that all of the administrations go on a forward basis, and I don't know who the other. I don't see there being another Republican coming into the primary possible at this point. So I think you really are looking at basically those three people.
Yep.
Of what their positions are, and I think any Democrat is going to be pro cannabis. So I think that we'll get that. That'll be our first relief.
Yeah.
I don't know how and when safe banking will get there. I think that in this particular circumstance, the Biden administration has gone a direction that might be faster than legislative.
RFK Jr. going independent. Big news this week, right?
That was huge.
That was huge.
I think that whoever is the next administration, whether it's Republican or Democrat, man, having him head of the NIH or Department of Health would be glorious for this country.
Huh.
Yeah.
We live in different times, don't we?
Very different.
Yeah.
To say the least.
To say the least. But anything's possible, as they say. All doors, I think, are being left open right now at this point. But anyways, Rob, appreciate the time. Let's keep in touch, okay?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
So what'd you all think of the interview? Did you like what we recorded with our guests? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you thought of it. And if there's any more questions you want us to ask, as usual, share this video with your network. Click on that bell for all notifications. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.